Archbishop Donizetsi of Esztergom died in 1465. He was succeeded by Chancellor, now Archbishop Ivan Vites of Esztergom. But as Vites rose to the highest clerical rank in the realm, his anti-Ottoman ambitions derailed, crashed, and burned. The anti-Ottoman diplomatic effort across Europe got the European courts to talk about the Ottoman threat and about helping Matthias, but when the funds Matthias needed for further campaigning had arrived, they numbered only a small portion of the requested 300,000 florins. Most of the money that was sent came from Venice and the papacy, who at the very least saw the realm of St. Stephen as their shield against the Ottomans. Emperor Frederick III promised to send money. Some of it arrived eventually. The diplomatic failure was partially due to the apparently grandiose style of diplomacy. The delegations sent to beg for money didn't look like they needed it. Another part of the problem was that Matthias became the victim of his own success. By proving he could win against the Ottomans, he made the problem less urgent. And lastly, Matthias was an upstart, looked down upon. He had no prestige or pedigree, he had no family at other European courts to plead his case and act as constant representatives. Arguably, his only family on the European stage were his main regional rival in a very influential position, and a heretic. The important thing is that there was not going to be money for an anti-Ottoman campaign. Europe talked about the Ottoman threat but did not act. So when 1465 rolled around, Matthias decided to quietly scrap the planned campaign due to lack of funds. An Ottoman delegation arrived at Budak to negotiate with Matthias in 1465 and again in 1468. Officially, Matthias sent them away packing, swearing never to make peace with the Sultan, especially not while his ally Venice was at war. Unofficially, it seems that some sort of understanding was reached. For the rest of the decade, neither side would make major offensives into each other's territory. Matthias left Venice to fight the Sultan alone, at a time when the Sultan was also fighting the Akyunlu Sultan Uzun Hasan in the east. So for a time there was no threat of invasion, and some historians say that the Ottoman raids into Hungary stopped, but we know they were present in Croatia. One possible reason for this was that the Sultan was still at war with Venice, and his raiders were going to Venetian territory, the communes on the Adriatic, and into Furlania, the Venetian terra firma. It said that the fires from Furlania could be seen from the top of the Campanile in Venice. Since raids are not invasions and Matthias's defensive system was still in its infancy, little could be done to stop them. On their way to Venetian possessions, the raiding parties raided Croatia, parts of Slavonia, and lands of Emperor Frederick III. Because of Matthias's inaction, Frederick III suspected that Matthias made a dirty deal with the Sultan, letting the raids pass so that Frederick's land gets raided and weakened. Another possibility is that the Ottomans were deliberately conducting raids into Croatia as they deemed it to be the soft underbelly of the realm of St. Stephen. It was furthest away from Budak and the king's army, at the very western end of the defensive network. The Ottomans could probably get away with continuous raids in the area, weakening Matthias's defensive wall. Croatia was economically weaker than the rest of the realm, especially after Venice had taken possession of the coastal communes. It was less populated, and the hills and mountains meant that fertile land was harder to come by than in the Hungarian flatlands of the Pannonian Basin. Thus, the raids could cause relatively more damage. The problem for this alleged plan would be caused by the terrain, which was very defensible. There was little room to maneuver around defenses, but it also provided hiding spots for the raiders. The Croatian magnate families were in charge of the defense of that part of the realm. They had more autonomy than the ones closer to Budak, that is to say the king, and they had a separate political identity, and tended to fight amongst themselves as much as they will start fighting the Ottomans. With the fall of Bosnia to the Ottomans, the stakes for the magnates were suddenly higher than ever before, one could say existential. It wasn't just their land, their patrimony that was under threat. It was their entire ancient kingdom and all that went with it. The whole situation can be symbolized by the royal castle of Knin, the traditional seat of the vice-regal Ban, the meeting place of the Croatian Diet. It was now on the front line. The struggle against the Ottoman raiders, the cost of the defense and repairs after raids, very quickly drained the magnates' coffers. To acquire more revenues for the defense of their patrimonial lands and their kingdom, they began to acquire new estates further away from the front line, through royal grants, purchases, marriages, the usual methods. Most of their new estates were in the more secure and fertile Kingdom of Slavonia, which meant that the kingdoms of Dalmatia and Croatia and Slavonia became more interlinked. King Matthias played an important role in further integrating the kingdoms by permanently unifying the office of the Ban of Dalmatia and Croatia and the Ban of Slavonia into one in 1476. The diets of the kingdoms would still meet separately, but technically included a lot of the same people. As the raids into Croatia and Slavonia intensified in the following decades, Matthias also granted the estates of Slavonia the privilege of only paying half taxes so that they could spend more money on defense directly. Another way the autonomously minded Croatian magnates secured funds and support for the defense was by pleading with the Pope, the Republic of Venice, or the Holy Roman Emperor, and this did not please King Matthias at all. Venice wanted several possessions on the East Adriatic coast. It wanted to complete its collection of Adriatic islands by taking the island of Krk, the home of the Frankopan dynasty. Venice also wanted the royal fortress of Klaić, which overlooks the commune of Split. In fact, in the early 1460s, the wife of the then Ban of Croatia signed documents selling Klaić to Venice after her husband was captured by the Ottomans. But Venice asked Matthias if the fort was actually for sale several times, to which the answer was no every time. In 1469, a crisis began around the fortress of Senj. Stephen Frankopan asked both Venice and Frederick III for support after a series of Ottoman onslaughts. Venice sent troops to reinforce the fortress. Matthias, upon hearing the news and fearing the loss of a key fortress to either Venice or Frederick III, sent the army to take the fort under royal control and away from the Frankopan family for good. Venice left the fort before the king's army arrived to take control. Ironically, Senj was one of the possessions Venice probably didn't want to directly control, as then they would have to pay for its defense. And we're going to end today by mentioning the Republic of Ragusa, Dubrovnik, which had secured its safety by paying tribute to the Ottoman Sultan, and as a loyal vassal paid tribute to King Matthias, thus acquiring the protection of both against the Republic of Venice. They also provided diplomatic and intelligence information to all sides. There's an old saying in Dubrovnik, "Sa svakim lipo, s nikim iskreno." Be nice to everybody, honest with nobody.